next piece is a speech, and speeches are technically in the category oratorical declamation, is what it's called. And Linnea Erickson will be giving this speech, written by J.K. Rowling.
Most of us know J.K. Rowling as a highly successful author of the Harry Potter series. However, her earlier life was spent struggling with poverty and failure. The fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination was given at the 2008 Harvard University Commencement. On this day, when we are gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. As you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an uneasy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do was write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds, and neither of whom had had a college education, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk that could never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. They hoped that I would take a vocational degree. Of all the subjects on this planet, I think it would have been hard to put a name on one less useful than Greek mythology. I would like to make it clear that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There's an expiration date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you're old enough to take the wheel, responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping I would never experience poverty. They have been poor themselves, and I have since been poor, and I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. But what I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. I'm not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. However, the fact that you are graduating from Harvard suggests that you are not well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by a fear of failure quite as much as by a desire for success. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded. I was jobless, a single parent, and as poor as it's possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. The fears my parents had had for me, and that I had had for myself, had both come to pass. And by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Now, failure is not enjoyable, so why do I talk about its benefits? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending that I was anything except for what I was, and began to direct all of my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one area that I believed I truly belonged. I was set free, because my greatest fear had already been realized, and I was still alive. And I had an old typewriter and a big idea, and so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself I never could have learned any other way. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above all else. Given a time machine, or a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist. Your qualifications are not your life, though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. of the greatest formative experiences of my life preceded Harry Potter. One of my earliest day jobs was working in the research department at Amnesty International headquarters in London. There, in my little office, I read hastily scribbled letters smuggled out of totalitarian regimes by men and women who were risking imprisonment to inform the outside world of what was being done to them. I saw photographs of those who had disappeared without a trace. I read the testimony of torture victims and saw pictures of their injuries. I opened handwritten eyewitness accounts of summary trials and executions, of kidnappings and rapes. Many of my co-workers were ex-political prisoners, people who had been displaced from their homes or fled into exile because they had the temerity to think independently of their government. I shall never forget the African torture victim, a young man no older than I was at the time, who had become mentally ill after all he had endured in his homeland. He trembled uncontrollably as he spoke into a video camera about the brutality inflicted upon him. He was a foot taller than I was, and seemed as fragile as a child. And as I escorted him to the underground station afterwards, and this man, whose life had been shattered by cruelty, took my hand and with exquisite courtesy wished me future happiness. Back then, every day of my working week, I was reminded how incredibly fortunate I was to live in a country where legal representation and a public trial were the rights of everyone. Every day, I saw more evidence about the evils humankind will inflict on their fellow humans or to gain or maintain power. I began to have nightmares, literal nightmares, about some of the things I saw, heard, and read. And yet, I also learned more about human goodness at Amnesty International than I had ever known before. Ordinary people, whose personal well-being and security were assured, join together in huge numbers to save people they do not know and will never meet. My small participation in that process was one of the most humbling and inspiring experiences of my life. One of the many things I learned in that classics corridor, down which I ventured at the age of 18 in search of something I could not then define, was this, written by the Greek author Plutarch. What we achieve inwardly will change outward reality. That is an astonishing statement, and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses, in part, our inescapable connection to the outside world, and the fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. But how much are you likely to touch other people's lives? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, the education you have earned and received, give you unique status and your unique responsibilities. The way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bring to bear upon your government has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and your burden. If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful, but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then not only will your proud family celebrate your existence, but also will millions whose realities you have transformed for the better. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. And so today, I hope that you remember the words of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. I wish you very good lives. Thank you.